Welcome to the Wander Mode podcast, where we celebrate the fearless spirit of women embracing life's wanderings. Where every story is a spark of inspiration and reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we simply embrace wherever the journey may lead. Today, we are welcoming Lynn Turcotte-Schuh. Lynn's an intuitive mentor helping work-from-home moms step out of survival mode and into a life that feels calm, connected, and full of joy. Beyond her work, Lynn's just a down-to-earth human. Mom, wife, and homesteader, raising animals, growing her own food, and rocking kitchen dance parties to new kids on the block. With her daily Kundalini yoga, love for all things garden and ocean, and a 30-year dedication to General Hospital, Lynn's all about finding joy in the everyday. I am super excited for you to hear all about her mission to break down that Supermom myth. All right, Lynn, I feel like we actually have a lot in common. We met through Boss Mom Plus, which I have really grown to love as a platform for connecting me with other women that I wouldn't necessarily run into here in Minnesota or in the business side of my life. And so I want to start with this question. Where are you at in your headspace today?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I also, not like to make an official plug for Boss Mom Plus, but I was really hesitant to join the paid app, and I am loving it too. So yeah, for sure.
I can't agree. Best money I've spent in a long time.
Yes, for sure. So today in particular, I am in really bad need of a brain dump. And so I'm going to actually be doing that shortly after we end our discussion. But the more general place that I'm in that's precipitating the need for that brain dump is that we, as probably many of your listeners, are in that process of getting ready for back to school. And we are a homeschooling family, and a lot of people don't think that we go through any transition, but we do. Summers, even though we do a little bit of schooling in the summer, the dynamic, the energy is completely different. It's much more just free and go outside and play barefoot and get dirty. And I'm not really worrying about a lot of stuff. We don't have a schedule to stick to. We don't have a lot of classes to worry about. Half the time I don't even know what time it is. I'm just like, oh, my belly's hungry. It must be around noon. We're not really paying attention. And in the next week or so, all of that starts to shift. So classes come back online. We have places that we need to be. We volunteer at a barn once a week. That's coming back online. So we're much more schedule driven, and I struggle with that as a person. My personality is much more routine driven, where I'll do the same things in the same order every day, but don't tell me to wake up at 8 to be there, because I'm going to sleep until I don't need sleep anymore. And so it's a pretty big transition for us. I also, being the teacher, that part of my brain has to come back online, and it's slowly happening this year. It's moving a little more. I need some coffee. The teacher brain needs a little coffee this year. But yeah, so there's a whole lot of stuff coming. I have some new stuff that I'm doing in my Facebook group for my business that's starting September 1st. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's just coming online right around when summer is ending. So I'm really in a space of transition right now, which is a little stressful and exciting because all the stuff that's coming up is fun. I just have to get into it. Once I'm in it, it'll be fun. Right now, it's a little stressful.
Isn't that interesting how even as parents, we get into that summer mentality of, okay, I can kind of turn my brain off for a little bit. It's a little bit more coast and we'll kind of figure it out later type of concept. I really like the idea of a brain dump, of really kind of getting all these ideas out on paper. But I'm curious, let's talk a little bit about your journey to homeschooling. What's your why behind homeschooling?
Yeah, so we actually have quite a few. My daughter is 10, she'll be 11 in November, so she's going into grade 5. And before she was even ready for preschool, my wife and I had decided that we were going to homeschool. And so it wasn't a COVID thing, it wasn't prompted by anything that happened externally. And this is nothing against public schools because we actually live in a really great school system.
Yeah.
If we were going to send our kid to public school, I would feel comfortable with our school system. Mm-hmm. And having said that, I had several people in our family that were also teachers. And they were just talking to us about how a lot of the standardization and the academic requirement and testing changes had kind of tied their hands. They really felt like they were teaching to the test. And then like, okay, now forget all that stuff and move on and we'll do the next thing. And that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I really wanted my daughter to have a really strong foundation of critical thinking skills and thinking outside the box and not just following instructions. I wanted her to question things and question people if it didn't feel right, even if it's me that she's questioning, which now I'm getting what I asked for. So that's super fun. I just have to take lots of deep breaths. So we wanted sort of that just foundational, not even personality, but like skills, I guess is a good way to put it. And so that was a piece of it. The other piece was that it wasn't really in service of me as a child that I was so busy. Like I would go to school, I'd come home, I'd have like hours worth of homework, and then I'd have sports, or I was in like drama club and band, and like I did all of these things, which at the time you're a kid, you just go with it. But as an adult, I look back and I'm like, man, I didn't really get to just be. Like I was never bored. There were so many times I'd be like, can I just read a book? And no, I couldn't because I had all these places to be. And so we live on a homestead. And so that was another factor of just like allowing my daughter to just kind of be in charge of her time and the majority of her day. I wanted her to be able to do some activities, but I didn't want her to be in school all day, have homework, do activities, and then be in bed at like 10 o'clock at night. I wanted her growing body to sleep as long as it needed to sleep and not have to wake up at 5:30 to be on the bus. So there was some logistics and scheduling that came into it as well. And I'll be honest, the other big reason, and I get a lot of pushback from older members of my family for this when we talk about it, but I think it's been really amazing for our family and I don't regret it at all. But I feel like sometimes in our country, our kids are separated from their parents so early that could be having an effect on all the anxiety and social issues that we're having now. And so I wanted to have my daughter be able to stay with us, especially in those early years, so that she always had that sort of safe place to come back to. And I don't know that it would work for everybody, but it has definitely worked for her in that now that she's getting older, she's actually becoming more and more and more and more independent completely on her own. And we have a lot of open conversation, she and I. We have a lot of deep conversations a lot. And she actually let me know that one of the reasons that she feels comfortable going and doing these things is because she knows that if something goes wrong, she has this safe place to land. She knows that we'll always have her back. And we have this thing where we say, it doesn't matter what's going on, we're a team, figure it out together. And so she's carried that connection and she carries all of those things with her. I'm seeing her be more independent than some other kids her age. So yeah. Those are the reasons.
Yeah, no, you touched on a few things, and I know talking to a former public school teacher, you kind of said, I'm so sorry, I don't want it to sound, and I totally don't take it that way. I completely agree with the other teachers that had talked with you about their experiences. Unfortunately, one of the biggest things that I felt it did was from a very young age, kids who were not passing the test and then didn't pass the next year and didn't pass the next year, their love of learning dwindled with their lack of self-confidence around a test score, around being put into these categories of I'm either meeting the standards, exceeding the standards, I'm not meeting the standards at all. And it's always fascinating to me to hear the reasons why people homeschool. Is it for religious reasons? Is it for sleep reasons? Is it for wanting a more personalized education for your kid? There's all sorts of reasons that I think lead people to choosing that path of being able to do education at home. And I have several friends who homeschool as well and have done it very successfully. But one of the things that you touched on too that I find so interesting is the sleep reason. And the reason that's really standing out to me is a girlfriend of mine just read a book about how important sleep is, and specifically how sleep in the morning is really our time for our brain to move things into long-term memory. And there's so much brain development that happens with that morning sleep period.
Yes.
And when you were touching on that, like letting her sleep when she needs to sleep, and also how you are struggling with going back to a more structured schedule of needing to be able to sleep till you want to sleep too, I find that so interesting. And that is a very, very powerful thing. And the book talks about studies that believe that some of that anxiety and depression that we are seeing in our kids is directly correlated to a lack of sleep. They're going to bed too late because of all this structured stuff. Yep. They're getting up too early because school has to start early for all the structured sports, etc., to happen after school.
Yes. No, it exactly is. I have actually behind me, I have a book that's all about sleep. Yeah, it's called Sleep Smarter. That book got me into really diving more deeply into how important sleep is. And when I start working with a client, I work with moms, that's one of the first things that we look at, because when we are sleep deprived, whether it's because we have a newborn or because we are not going to bed early enough, or like sleeping long enough, it can really cause a lot of issues in our body physically and with our mental health. And so sleep is like super important for me. I had mononucleosis twice when I was a child. I had it once in 2nd or 3rd grade. I was out of school for almost 3 months. And then I was like doing my work at home. And then I had it again in 5th grade. And I was out for like 6 weeks that time. And that second time that I got it, it changed something in my body, because ever since then, I need at least 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night. And if I don't get that, I am not functional. I don't function very well. I'm not very nice to people. I make mistakes because I'm not able to focus. I don't have attention to detail. It's very impactful for me personally. And so I've learned as an adult, when I am tired, when I feel like I need to go to sleep, I go to sleep. Sometimes that's at 6:30 at night. Sometimes it's at 9:30 at night. But like, I really think it's important that we start listening to our bodies more about that. And for me personally, that was something really important that I wanted to teach my daughter, was to listen to your body. So she doesn't have a bedtime. When she's tired, she goes to sleep, and sometimes at 7:30, and sometimes she's awake longer than I am because I've gone to bed already. But she knows we're not staying up to watch shows. If you feel like you're not tired yet, you can grab a book, you can color, you can do something else. But once you start to feel sleepy, then shut everything down and go to sleep. And she knows her body really, really well, and I trust her with that. She also, though, because we homeschool, has the advantage of, if I went to bed a little later, I can sleep until 8:30 and not have to be up at 5 to get ready and go catch the bus. And so there's that flip side. So we try to, when we have things that we need to be at a certain time, classes, events, things during the school year, we try to be ready to go to bed. So we've showered, we've brushed teeth, we've had pajamas on, we've done all of our stuff. No more responsibilities. All the animals are fed. Everything's cleaned up. We try to have that done by 7 p.m. And then that gives us the flexibility to go to sleep right then or stay up for another hour. During the summer, sometimes it's like 8:30, 9, and we're still brushing teeth. So that's kind of where the transition has to come into. But I don't think enough people understand the negative impact of not getting enough sleep. It's so important for us.
Well, I think, too, it's because we value busyness. We put a badge on busyness. And as moms especially, there's a little bit of this badge of honor of like, I'm this exhausted mom kind of complex of I do it all. And
Supermom. I call that Supermom.
Right, which I think you had said either on Instagram or maybe in Boss Mom that you're like trying to combat that mentality.
Yeah, I'm like, on a personal mission to take down Supermom.
Yes.
Yes.
And so let's dive into this, because I know this is a little bit of an epiphany that you had about being overscheduled as a kid, and that led you to lots of things happening in life, moves and deciding to go into homesteading and that sort of thing. So tell me a little bit about your history being overscheduled as a kid and what led to some of these big moves in your life that have been pretty impactful.
Yeah, so I would say I was overscheduled until I graduated college. Truly. I even did it to myself while I was in college because I was in 8 different clubs and had all these extra classes. I had 2 jobs on campus. Like, it was kind of crazy. And I went to school for marine biology, and my goal was to become a marine mammal trainer. So I really wanted to work with sea lions, and that was kind of like my thing. So in senior year of college, right, for a lot of professions, you're applying for internships or on-the-job training type things to get your foot in the door. So the animal care field is the same. So I was applying to all different internships, and I had gotten accepted to 3, and one of them was in Alaska. And something was just drawing me to that one in Alaska. So I ended up accepting that one, and I graduated college, and 7 days later, I was on a flight to Alaska, and I was there for 3.5 months for my internship, and then I didn't want to leave. And the facility I was at was newer, so they had a lot of positions opening up, and they actually hired me on as staff. And so I got to stay up there for just over 4 years. I lived up there and worked up there, and I honestly think I would still be there to this day because I loved it so much. And I like to say that I grew into myself up there because I was an adult age-wise. I found myself. I found who I truly was. I kind of unleashed parts of myself that I had kept hidden in childhood because they weren't really acceptable, most of it around spirituality and stuff. And so I just blossomed into this incredible human being. And I think what I found most valuable up there and what I realized most about myself is that I needed that slower pace of life. I needed that small community, everybody knows each other and takes care of each other kind of feel. I really needed the space physically, metaphorically. I mean, I lived in Seward, which it's on the Kenai Peninsula, so like south central Alaska. And the little town itself is literally 3 sides surrounded by mountains and then a bay. And so it's so humbling. That state is humbling because everything's just these wide expanses and these huge mountains and untouched wilderness. So I just learned so much up there. And so when I moved back east to closer to where I grew up, I knew that I couldn't go back to what I had been raised in. So my wife and I moved to Maine because that was pretty close to the culture and feel of Alaska while still being a 6-hour drive from home where I grew up. And then while we were up there, my wife got offered a job at an aquarium here in Connecticut. So she was in a similar field as I was. So we moved down to Connecticut for work purposes. And again, we found this little slice of Connecticut that is like mostly farm country and it's this small town feel. So we live on a 14-acre homestead in Connecticut, 45 minutes from Providence, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours from Boston, 4 hours from New York City. And yet we're in this little bubble that still feels like an open place and really slow life. And we work to keep it that way because it's so easy to get sucked back in. So that's kind of the foundational piece. And then Supermom came in when I became a mom. And I was starting to really get crushed under the pressure and the mentality that I have to be doing all these things. And there was one very poignant moment where I had this epiphany. It all came together for me, which I'm happy to share. But after that, I was like, this is bull doo-doo. Like... this, like, moms cannot function like this. There's going to come a time where they're going to burn out. And why, what are we doing that for? Like, it was so nonsensical to me that I can't even form words around it.
I think you can't not share.
Yes. I know. That's like saying I have a secret and then not telling it. No, I tell this story all the time. And it's because from the Supermom standpoint, that was the pivotal moment for me. And my daughter she was like around 3 months old. She was still in the blob phase, you know, where they're like, they don't really do anything yet. the 4th trimester newborn phase, and we were just having our normal day. It was later in the morning, and I had just finished feeding her. We breastfed, so I had no bra on. There was breast milk all over my shirt because, you know, it had leaked right before she was eating. I hadn't showered in days. Like, I don't know how many days, but it had been days. And my hair, I like to say it wasn't even a rat's nest. Like, I don't even know what it was, just like up and then something. I think it held itself in place with all the greasy stuff. I don't know. But that's where we were at. I was exhausted because newborn phase. Talk about sleep. Like, I was not functioning well. And I took a lot of naps during the day, which went against the Supermom thing. But I was like, my body needs sleep. Like, I need to prioritize this. So I was just like, I was a hot mess. And I didn't really care in the moment because I was like, whatever, like, this is just life. And then my dogs started barking, which for us means somebody's here, which doesn't happen just by accident because we're like on a dead end, on a dead end, of a dead end. And so I peeked out the window and it was a friend that I hadn't seen since my daughter was born. And my initial reaction was of excitement. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad. Like, I've missed this person. I'm so glad she's here. And so I grabbed my baby and started walking to our front door to let her in. And in our kitchen, we have these glass front cabinets. And so if the lighting is right, they act like mirrors. And so I was walking past some of them and I got a glimpse of myself and I was so embarrassed. I was like, I cannot see this. Like, my whole mood changed because I had this picture in my head. Like, I'm supposed to look like Supermom. Like, I'm supposed to be put together and showered. I'm like, maybe teeth brush, maybe brush my hair. I don't know. Like, I shouldn't look like this in motherhood. And I opened the door. She could have cared less. And she gave me a hug. We ended up having a wonderful visit, but that like shame and guilt stayed with me. And as she was walking out the door, she did a little like, thing. And she was like, you're kicking butt, Supermom. And I was like, oh, thank you. And she walked out the door. And that set me down this path of, I'm not Supermom. Like, this, what I saw in those cabinets is not Supermom. But B, I don't think I want to be. That was kind of the bigger epiphany that came out of that day, because until I had made that comparison to myself, I was doing fine. I looked like not doing fine, but like I wasn't feeling ashamed. I wasn't down on myself about not being productive enough. I was keeping myself alive and this tiny human alive that I had grown inside my body. That's no small feat in itself. And so I was like done trying to have all this pressure put on me. And yeah, so that was the day that I decided I'm not going to be Supermom because I don't want to be, and I'm going to do my best to take down that entire system, because no other mom should be trying to do that either. It's literally impossible. It is an impossible ideal to live up to, and it just sets us up for failure in motherhood. So I have no love for Supermom.
Yeah. Becoming a mom is such a humbling experience on a lot of different levels. For 9 months, you're sharing your body with another human being, and you walk out of the hospital or you give birth if you're having a home birth or wherever. And all of a sudden it's like, now I'm 100% responsible for this being. And it's like, and I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, yep. There's more of a process to adopt an animal most of the time.
Yes.
Than there is to go home with this little thing. And you're learning, and it's not the same for everybody. Your little human being has different needs and different personality and different things. And it's an incredibly humbling experience. How was your wife reacting to this epiphany at the time?
Yes. So she was working outside of the home at the time. We were butting heads a lot. And part of that was because of this epiphany. So I had shared this epiphany with her, and I was like, I'm going to do the best I can. She was totally supportive of that. She was not expecting anything. But what came of it was she came home and started to help out. And I was getting upset about that from this perspective. She would be gone all day long, and I would be waiting for her to come home so I could just have 5 seconds to like pee by myself without a child yelling. Or my daughter would only sleep if she was being held. She refused to sleep if we put her down, even at night. And so every nap was a contact nap, and I just was touched out and I just needed a break. And she would walk through the door and she would start taking out the trash and doing dishes and doing laundry, and I would just get so angry because I was like, can you just come sit with me for like 5 minutes and talk to me, because I've not had any other adult interaction all day. And B, can you take our daughter? Can you take your kid and take her for a walk or something so I can shower? I felt totally ignored and dismissed. And I felt like she was in a passive aggressive way telling me that I was failing because she had to come home from after working this huge long day. And now I have to come home and do all this other stuff that could have been done while I was gone. And so we were starting to have some big issues. And then we got introduced to the 5 love languages. And I know there's some controversy around the initial book that came out with that Gary Chapman wrote. But the concept itself, I have applied to my parenting, and it saved my marriage. Because what we learned is that her love language is acts of service, and my love language is physical touch and quality time. And so she was coming home, and in order to fill my bucket and feel loved, I needed her to just come sit with me and hold my hand or give me a hug. And her way of showing me how much she loved me was coming home and doing these acts of service so that I wouldn't have to do them. And so once we had that realization, that light bulb, I was like, oh my gosh. And literally the very next day, she came home and she did a whole load of dishes. She did like 2 loads of laundry. That weekend, she vacuumed the house, which she hates doing to this day. She hates vacuuming. And so I literally was on the couch crying, and she came over and she said, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Thank you." I got it. I got that she was doing it because she loved me, not because she thought I was failing. And it just changed the tone for everything. So that was really huge for us. And I felt much more supported. I felt so much less alone in it after we had that little realization. And yeah, it's something that we still to this day, 10 years later, almost 11 years later, we will remind each other. If we start to forget, why are you mowing the lawn? We were going to do family day today. Right, because your love language is acts of service. So thank you for loving me enough to mow our lawn. I appreciate that.
Oh, I love that story so much. I just interviewed a gal who is a therapist, and she has a lot of training through Brene Brown. Mm-hmm. And Brene Brown has this whole concept of the story we tell ourselves. And we can paint this picture of why someone is doing what it is that they're doing, right? Like your wife coming home and doing the dishes and the laundry and all these things. And you're thinking, somehow then I'm not doing enough. I should have done that so that we could have then spent time together or whatever. But you play out this whole story in your head. She doesn't care about me. I've been home all day by myself. She doesn't want to spend time with me. She'd rather prioritize the dishes, etc. You can paint this whole picture of why someone's behaving the way that they do. And how crazy is it that had you not come across that 5 love languages situation, it would have just continued to lead to more and more conflict and more chaos and frustration rather than getting to the root and understanding the why behind somebody. It's really, it's so powerful.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I'm not exaggerating. I really believe that saved our marriage. Because if we had kept going on the path we were on, it would not have been a good place.
Wow, that's so crazy. And I'm so glad that you found that concept. And I think that any of these things like sleep books or the 5 love languages, they're tools, right?
Yes.
They're tools that we need in life in order to function and be successful and have cohesive relationships with other people. Now, I know that you work with a lot of other moms to help them find joy in their lives as well. And I'm sure some of that has stemmed from your own personal experience. Is that what got you into the career path that you're on now in helping moms? Is stories like this where you're like, I need to be able to help other people? Or how did that transition occur?
Yeah, you would think it did, but it was not.
No. Oh, crazy.
I actually had intended to go back to work because, spoiler alert, I became a sea lion trainer. That was my profession for 15 years. So I had intended to go back to work after my maternity leave, and animal care, animal training is not a job you get into for the money. We'll just put it that way. So
kind of like teaching.
Yes. Yes. So we were 2 weeks away from me going back to work, and we started projecting out our budget. And after paying for daycare, I would have been bringing home $200 a month. And we were like, it's not worth it. It's not worth someone else raising our kid, basically, for $200 a month. I can find some way to make up some of that money some other way. So, some people have to do daycare. And so I feel really privileged that we were able to do this. And I mean, money's been a struggle. So it's not like we were like, woohoo, swimming in it. It just was a conscious decision that we made. So I was like, okay, I need to make some money for my family. What am I just as passionate about in this new realm of life that as I was with animal training and with sea lions and educating the public about all that stuff? And the one thing I came up with was how my birth went with my daughter. So we took a really intensive childbirth class called the Bradley Method. It was 12 weeks. We met once a week with our instructor, and my goal was to have an unmedicated vaginal birth. And I ended up achieving that. And it was an incredible, empowering, I would do it a million times over experience. It was painful. Like, I'm not discounting that part of it. And I didn't realize that I was an exception. I just assumed a lot of people had this experience. And then I started to understand that I was like a unicorn. To have this amazing, empowering birth is like a unicorn experience. And that really bothered me. So when my daughter was 6 months old, I got certified as a childbirth educator. And I started working as a childbirth educator. I taught private classes. I worked in some of the local hospitals. And that was my career up until last year. And last year, I had so many clients that either had been with me from childbirth classes or that were just coming into my sphere in general that were asking me for parenting help, that I made a transition in my business. And last spring, so it's been like a year and a half now, my business got a new name. I rebranded everything. I had been teaching mindfulness classes. I had been teaching lots of other stuff for the postpartum period, right? The postpartum period is actually the first 3 to 5 years after baby's born. So I had been doing stuff for moms in that capacity. And I realized that they were all having very similar struggles as I did at that time. And the biggest issues were not taking care of themselves. Like, as a human being, we drop to the bottom of the priority list, and that causes a lot of issues. They didn't have the support in general and to help them fight Supermom, right? So like help them not feel like they needed to live up to that ideal. And a lot of us in my generation, or the generations pretty close to us, a lot of us were raised from a standpoint of control. We were taught to, be seen and not heard, and you do whatever your parents say. And I didn't want to raise my daughter like that. And everything since the day she was born, my goal in parenting has been connection. And people were watching that, and they were seeing the results of that. And so those are the 3 main areas that I now focus on when I work with clients. I have a 16-week program, and we focus on, you got to take care of yourself first. Supermom is a myth. Let's not try to live up to her. And when it comes to parenting, we're going to focus on connection, not control, because it's a relationship. It's not a job. And so that has put me down this new path, and I'm loving it. I think I loved being a childbirth educator. It taught me so much about myself, and I was able to help a lot of families. And you can give birth whether you take a class or not. Like, the baby's coming out regardless. And I've realized that moms especially, but families in general, where they really need the support is after baby's here. And so I've been really enjoying this new pivot that my career took.
Can you share a story about a client that has had a transformation in some way, that has come to you and said, all right, I need help with this sort of thing? And what were you able to dive into that was the crux of the issue, or what she needed to work on, and then what the result was at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just had 3 weeks ago, one of my clients graduated from my program, and she's my biggest success story in that she was like the ideal client avatar come to life. And so that was really exciting for me. And when we started, she was feeling a lot of anxiety. She was feeling a lot of pressure. I work primarily with work from home moms. So they're either running their own business or they work for somebody else, but from home. So they're in the midst of the laundry and the cleaning and like all the stuff, but they have to focus on something else. That is a unique set of challenges. And she had a full-time job that she worked out of her house. She was really stressing. She has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and she was really hard on herself because she felt like she was losing the connection with the 5-year-old since the 3-year-old had come along. She was not enjoying motherhood at all. She was what I call in survival mode. So she was just going through the day, mindlessly going through the day and doing the things, but she wasn't really getting any joy out of it. Her spark had gone out. Her light had gone out. And so that's where we started. And we slowly worked through the program, the 16-week program. And one of the very first things I have my clients do in that program is write a letter to themselves 16 weeks in the future. And it's a little bit of manifestation, a little bit of goal setting. Like, it's a fun exercise. It hits many notes. Like, there's many reasons that we do it. She wrote this letter, and in week 1, when she read it to me, we both cried because it was just beautiful. And it was talking about how her mornings were not chaotic anymore. She was waking up and appreciating the time she had with her girls, and there was no more yelling and screaming to get out of the house. She was talking about how things felt easier in motherhood, and she was being more intentional and mindful about all the choices she was making throughout her day. She talked specifically about how this certain time of day each day was now her time, and that she would go for walks outside and reconnect with nature and go barefoot in the grass. Like, she was really, really detailed about all of these things. And so we worked the program together, and the very last meeting, I have my clients go get that letter and not look at it yet. And we reread it together at the end. And we were both sobbing because it was as if she had manifested every single thing on the list. So she would read a section and then she would just start crying because she was like, I could have actually written this morning. This is where I am actually living now. And so it was just the most beautiful experience. I felt so honored and blessed to have been walking beside her. And I have lots of other clients that have similar stories, but she was one of the first clients that did the program. Like, if I told her, I'm going to encourage you to paint your door green, she just went and did it because she knew there was a reason I was asking her. And so it was lovely for me as a mentor, and it was amazing for her to have this transition. So yeah, it's a work in progress. Self-care, I think you're never done with that. It's something you always have to keep recommitting to. Yeah, I could talk about her all day. I love her. She's stuck with me.
Yeah. Well, and what impactful work, because it's more than just impacting the mom's life. It's impacting her as a woman, but it's also impacting her kids' lives, because no one wants to be that mom, right? Yeah. No one wants to be the burned out mom. No one wants to be the mom that doesn't have energy for their kids. No one wants to be the mom that's yelling at their kids. No one wants to be the mom that's waking up who doesn't want to go spend time with her kids. No one wants that, but your kids feel that, you feel that, and that's really where you create that toxic cycle that can be really hard to break, because it's all on you to break it. I mean, your kids aren't going to break it for you. So that is such impactful work, because it's impacting more than just one life. It's also the lives of her kids and the way that they're able to interact with her and see her as a mom.
Yeah, 100%. I don't take credit for my clients' transformations, because all I really do is hold space for them and help them with some mindset shifts and some insights. They are the ones doing all the work. And so I get super emotional when I talk to them, because I'm just so proud of them. I'm like, you are a boss. You are killing this right now. And they're like, all I did was shower this morning. I'm like, I know. Like, that's amazing. Do you understand how huge that is? You showered this morning without guilt and without shame. Like, you showered by yourself for 10 minutes with music on. All I do is just hold that space for them, and they're doing all the work. And I get to watch that transformation, and it's just, I feel like for some reason, a lot of the clients that I get are trying to break some generational cycles. And so I relate to that a lot too. Everything about it is so rewarding for me. I'm just so grateful that this is the trajectory it has taken.
The transformation happens because we need someone to hold space for us, because we aren't really holding space for ourselves, right?
Yes.
That if you can't do that for yourself, you almost need someone else to do it for you for a little bit and say, I see you, I hear you, but then let's work toward this as a goal that makes it feel more doable, versus that story that we tell ourselves, right? Is it's always going to be this way, and being a mom is so hard, and it's never going to feel easy, and I'm not good at it, or maybe I shouldn't have become a mom or whatever. But when somebody else holds space for us, then it allows us to release a little bit of that burden.
Yes. And that's why I created the program in the way that I did. So it's an 8-module course with little videos, worksheets, and things for kind of the logistic stuff. But then there's also a weekly group coaching call so that you can see you're not alone and other people are having the same struggles. And then over the 16 weeks, you get 5 one-on-one mentorship calls with me to be able to dig a little deeper. And the reason I set it up like that is for exactly what you're saying, because it's my role as the mentor to hold the space. And I like to say I give tough love and a hug. So like when I am mentoring a person and they say something like, oh, I yelled at my kid this morning, I'm such a bad mom. I'm like, time out. No. Back up the bus. Like, that is a lie. That is a bold-faced lie. Let's talk about this right now. It's like we'll call people out. We have a whole section on limiting beliefs. That's what those things are called, right? Those false beliefs that we have. And so as a mentor, I'm asking the right questions and I'm holding the space. And I could do that for 10 different clients. And the only ones that are going to have the transformation are the ones that are actually doing the work. And when we're not meeting, putting these things into practice. And so I 100% agree. When you're in survival mode, you cannot raise yourself up. And so I am lifting them up. But you can only do so much, and then they have to take it from there. You need both at the beginning. And my goal for all my clients is that they don't need me anymore. That's my exciting day, when they don't need me anymore. And then you're just my friend, and you're stuck with me and my craziness as my friend. But yeah, for sure.
Now, tell me a little bit about, because I read that you're an angel card reader. So tell me a little bit about how that works. Is that part of this course and mentorship type of thing?
Yeah. There's a whole group of, I'll say, card decks called oracle cards. So there's like tarot cards and there's oracle cards. And tarot cards are very specific meanings. So like every tarot card deck has the same cards in it. They look a little different. The artistry is a little bit different. But they have all the same cards, all the same meanings. Oracle cards are created by really spiritual people, and every oracle card deck is different. So they'll all have different cards, they all have different artistry, the cards have different meanings, and it's kind of based on the author and their perspective and point of view. So when I was 9 years old, I was gifted my very first oracle deck. It was medicine cards. I still have the deck. It's pretty beaten up. And so where tarot cards tend to try to give you insight about future things or give you more answers and timing, oracle cards tend to give a bigger picture view and general guidance and insight to help you move forward. And so I have been using oracle cards my entire life. I'm an empath, and I have a really strong connection with what I call angels and ancestors. I call it our spiritual team. Mm-hmm. All the spirits and energies that are around us that just support us every day. And so I have been using that for my own self for my entire life, just as a guidance thing, as a coping mechanism. It's just been a really big part of my life and who I am. And so when I became an adult, I started following a mentor in this realm. His name is Kyle Gray, and he creates oracle card decks. He also teaches Kundalini yoga and meditation. He can actually see spirit and angels, so he does all kinds of things too. And there's a certification course in one of his decks called Angels and Ancestors. And so I've been certified by him as an angel card reader to read oracle decks, and I actually am just finishing up certification for one of his decks specifically called Angels and Ancestors. And all that basically means is that I've done a lot of work with a mentor myself to be able to really dig deep into what these cards mean and connect with the energies that are going to give people guidance. And so it's not just for fun for me. I use it as an actual tool in my life and for my clients to help guide us in certain ways. And I also do those readings totally separate. So like any random person could like book an angel card reading with me. But the way that I use it in my mentorship with moms is unbeknownst to some of my clients. I will come into my office about 10 minutes before my sessions with them. I have an essential oil mix that I use, and I put it on my third eye center. I put it on my throat chakra, and I put it on my heart center. And I ask my team to help me feel the truth, speak the truth, and see the truth so that I can guide my client in the best way forward. I also will pull a card for myself to help give me some guidance on what some deeper issues might be coming up in the session ahead. And then I also pull a card for the client that I'm about to meet with to help me understand what space they might be in. And so how to approach them. Like, do I need to be more gentle today? Do I need to be more straightforward today? How am I going to serve them the best? And then I just sit on that for a few minutes. And then I open up the session with them. I have had clients ask for some guidance from the cards. And so during a one-on-one session, I will pull cards out and we'll do like a smaller spread and just get some guidance. So I use it on the back end for myself. And I also, if clients are interested, can use it as an actual tool during their mentorship.
I would guess in some ways you really are in the therapy field to some level now. And so that makes complete sense, that preparation that you have to do for yourself to come in open-minded and to see their story as completely unique and being open to hearing them. And I love that you've been able to do the training to that depth with someone with those types of tools, especially in the kind of work that you do. I think motherhood has to be approached so sensitively because as a mom, my previous experiences, trauma, etc., overlay that on top of like now I'm a wife and I work for somebody maybe, or I work for myself. I now have these little ones. So I could see how that would take a lot of preparation.
Yeah. So I always am very careful to tell people I'm not a therapist and I will vouch for therapy until my dying breath. Therapy has saved my life on multiple occasions. Yeah. So if I have a client, and this has actually happened twice, where I have felt like the client either had anxiety or depression symptoms over and above what I would feel comfortable helping them with, I have given them their money back and said, I will be here to support you in any way I can, and this is beyond my scope, and I've helped them to find a therapist in their area. So I'm very careful to not cross that line. But I feel even when I don't want to be connected to the energies around me, I almost like get these little, I call them downloads. My family laughs at me, but I get these like little thoughts or ideas in my head that have nothing to do with anything that I have been thinking. And so I know it's not my own thoughts. And when I am mentoring somebody, I tune into those because I know that those are messages from their energetic or spiritual team. And that helps me to keep my story out of it as well. So I almost am pushing my energy back, my thoughts back, and I'm trying to tune into whatever messages their team have for me so that I can relay that to them. And sometimes it's through the cards, and sometimes it's just because I'm listening and I'm open and I'm paying attention to that. Other times I'll be writing feverishly while they're talking. I have a notebook and I'll look down and it's a whole thought that I didn't even think, and I'll read it to them. So I call myself an intuitive mentor for moms. And that's what I mean with that intuitive part of my title, is because a lot of the guidance or insights I'm giving are not actually coming from me. They're coming from whatever team the person has on their end, because my belief is that those ancestors and those angels and spirits have been with that person since the day they were born. They know them way better than I ever will. And so I really rely on that intuitive ability to be able to connect.
I love it. And I have so much more that I'm probably going to talk about with you off air about that. But my curiosity is, with you being an empath and channeling other people's energy and listening to stories and trying to help provide guidance, how are you taking care of yourself? I know that sleep is a big priority for you, but just as you're helping other people learn how to take care of themselves and do what they need, how do you take care of yourself in this role? Because I would imagine that would be very emotionally taxing.
It is. It's draining. There are several boundaries I put in place, and there are several things that I do. So I love this question. I'm happy to share. First of all, from an energetic standpoint, doing that little ceremony ahead of time puts me into a space where I'm in the presence of someone else's energy, but I'm not taking on that energy myself. That's number one. Having said that, the flip side of that is when I do that little ceremony, especially for our group calls, I will lead us in this opening visualization where we're coming together as a group and we're physically making this bubble of light around us to protect us. And so I will project my energy into the space to provide the base for that. And so I'm exhausted. I'm really, really tired and spent afterwards. So I will not do more than 3 calls in a day. whether that's a client call, a group call, or a reading, I've capped myself to 3 calls in a day. I try to do the calls just on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that gives me Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to like be with my animals and on my homestead and kind of recover a little bit. So that's one boundary that I put into place. The other thing, just as an empath, my daughter is an empath as well. There's a lot more of us out there than people realize, I think. But I used to be really afraid, and I would put this bubble of protection around me and try to keep myself closed off from everything and like repel the energy as much as possible. And I saw a class or read something a couple of years ago. I don't remember what it was. It was a spiritual person, and they were talking about how when we do that, we let the darkness get closer and closer. And that what we really need to do is push our light out, like extend our energy. And so if I'm going into a place that feels really heavy, or if I walk into something that feels really heavy, I will just take a moment and I will put my hand on my heart center and I will close my eyes and take a deep breath. And I just repeat to myself that I am the keeper of my body, mind, and emotions. And where love lives, fear is a stranger, and love lives in me. And as I'm saying that to myself, I imagine my heart center light pushing outwards and almost like a blaster wave of light just pushing through the space, so that instead of putting a bubble around myself and darkness encroaching, I'm pushing my own light out to keep it away. And in doing so, sometimes that can change the energy of the room in general. But at the very least, it gives me that protection to not have it all coming at me. And then the third thing that I do is I have my own mentor. So I practice what I preach. I have a mentor that I see twice a month, and she helps me with business and my spirituality stuff. And she's a human design expert, so she helps me with just learning why I do things and how I do things.
Especially when you were talking about pushing your light out versus that protective bubble, I think that's so instinctual to be like, oh, I'm just going to kind of put a bubble around myself. I'm just going to ignore. I'm not going to pay attention. I feel like taking your light and pushing it out almost brings the control back to you.
Yes.
Versus it's impossible to keep a perfect shield around you all the time. Like little things start to get in, and that's exhausting to constantly hold that out, versus if I can control what I'm projecting, that just feels more empowering.
Yes, 100%. I'm such a geek, but I love all things Twilight and Harry Potter, all this stuff. So when I'm doing it, I picture that scene in the Twilight movie where Bella's projecting the bubble to protect everybody there. That's literally what I see in my head. I'm sending out this bubble.
Yes.
Except it's light. It's like a bubble of light that's like pushing through. But yeah, that's the visual
totally.
that I have.
That is the perfect representation of that. I was obsessed with those books.
Same.
Yeah.
Well, here's the important question, not to go off on a crazy tangent, but which team are you on? Are you Team Edward or Team Jacob?
You know, to be honest, I'm kind of Team Edward.
Oh, I change my answer. I'm usually Team Jacob, but we can still be friends.
Good. I'm glad we can still be friends. See, I think I would have been Team Jacob, but I ultimately switched because I felt like because he ended up being connected to her daughter.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, in my mind, that connection was never meant to be theirs. It was just more of they were spiritually connected because he was always meant to come to her through her daughter.
You may have just converted me. I'm not even kidding, because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
If you go to the end, they were not meant to be on that level. Yes. Okay.
Maybe I you, and now we'll be on the same team.
You legitimately might have just converted me to Team Edward. I'll have to think on it, but I'm 99% there because I love that perspective.
So fun. I love that we ended up talking about Twilight. Like, it's so crazy where these conversations can go sometimes.
Right?
Okay, so if someone wanted to have you be their mentor, where would they find you and kind of what would that process be?
Yeah. So I have a 16-week program, and there is an application process to get into that. There's a questionnaire that I have people fill out just so I can get to know them a little bit better. And then we have a 30-minute, I call it an intentions call. So I'll read the questionnaire ahead of time, and we use that 30 minutes to really dig a little bit deeper to see if this program's a good fit and if they are jiving with me as a mentor. Because like I said, I give tough love and a hug, so I want to make sure that that's right. But it's important that I have that sort of application bit at the beginning because Some moms are in survival mode, which is that they still have enough capacity to come out of that fog. They have the capacity with someone holding space for them and with the step-by-step tools that I give. They have enough to follow those steps and get themselves out. And those are the moms that I will put through into the program. Other moms are living in the survival state of the brain. So like our brain has kind of three main states. There's a executive function. When we're feeling really calm and safe in life, our executive brain is in charge. When we start to feel unsafe and our brain's trying to figure out, do we need to go into a full fight or flight thing? We drop down into our emotional brain, and that's when we get triggered really easily. And so a lot of moms that are in survival mode are in that emotional part of their brain. If our brain is like danger Will Robinson, like if our brain is feeling this is not good, it drops down into the survival state, which is basically our primitive animal brain. And when a mom or a human is in that state, they literally cannot access the higher levels of thinking and problem solving, like I can't think past tomorrow kind of stuff. And so that person is not ready for the program. They physically wouldn't have the ability to do what is asked of them. And it's not their fault. They just need some help getting out of that survival state to be able to take the steps. And so for them, I will put them into my free Facebook group and give them some support in that way. Or that's where therapy is really good at helping people get out of that. And so that's kind of what the application process is before. I want to make sure people are in survival mode, not in that survival state. And then if people want to hang out with me and see if they want to have me as a mentor, I do have a free Facebook group. It's called Awakening Your Light, because a lot of moms, our lights have just been dim and we feel like they're out completely, but they're not. And so this Facebook group helps us remember them and reawaken them. And so in there, we do a monthly community call. I come on once a week and do a Facebook Live just about a little topic. And starting actually on September 1st, we're trying something new, and we're going to have a year of monthly themes. So the monthly theme for September is commitment to self-care. So all September long, we're talking about different parts of committing to self-care and what it is and why it's important. I'm on Facebook, just as my name, Lynn Turcotte-Schuh, and on Instagram at Radiant Joy Motherhood.
Perfect. And I will be sure to link to the sleep book and any other resources that you think might be helpful too.
Yeah, so perfect. Sounds great.
Very good. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Okay. Thanks for wandering with me today. If you were inspired by this episode and think it would ignite a spark in a friend, don't hesitate to share. And if you're craving more from the Wander Mode community, hop on over to Instagram at WanderModeCo. Meet you in the next episode, and until then, wander on.